Computer. All right. So the market's definitely turned. It is now April/May 2026, and the market has turned. If you're holding open houses, you're probably getting hammered. My advice to everyone doing an open house right now is you should have a secondary person there, even if it's a lender or a second agent, because you really can't build relationships in 2 or 3 hours with 20 people. So I had 16 at my last open house, and I did my best, and it was spread out, so that was good. But the thing that comes with that is obviously multiple offers. So, um, any comments on how the multiple offers have been for people?
Well, I had two offers on my latest flip. It was only two, but one had an escalation clause, so drove up the price of them.
Right. Okay. How much was the gap on the escalation?
Um, Buster was listing this for me, so I fuzzy on the details. I
Yeah.
think they said they would beat the other offer by 10 or by
10.
5.
Wow.
And the price was only 285.
Wow. That's amazing.
So as a percentage, that was
Yeah. That's up almost like 4%. So that's a pretty high escalation. Anybody else? What's going on? If you've been participating as a buyer agent in multiples or a listing agent, what's been your
We're probably gonna have a situation where we will be having multiple offers. I'm on the buyer side for a home that's being coming
okay?
soon for quite a while.
I switched
And
it to the house speakers. Can you say that again?
oh, I'm gonna probably be
It's not
trying
going
to.
to the house. Okay. How about now?
I'm probably going to have a situation with multiple offers for a home that has been on the coming soon for quite a while. And I've been in touch with a listing agent, and she says there is a lot of interest, and my buyers are very interested in. And we are getting ready for a competitive offer, meaning that we're probably gonna go walk in. We're gonna do a walk-in talk inspection on the day when the home goes on the market.
Okay.
And I will like definitely ask today if somebody can give me a suggestion, what is the best course?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit. These are what I'm about to go through on these slides is it's geared more toward a buyer agent, um, but a selling agent, a listing agent, I think could use these as, okay, what can I do with this when someone brings it up to me? One that I've used is add a deadline ahead of the deadline. What I mean by that is I'm making my offer as a buyer. I've lost three before because I'm making my offer on Friday or Saturday and they want me to wait till Monday. And I know the best is the best that I can do. So on this one, I advise, look, we're at 650. What's the most you would pay for this house? Well, I would do 695. Okay, then our offer is 695. It's Friday night. We give them till tomorrow at 3. I'm sorry, that's plenty of time to look at a contract. And don't tell me that, well, they've got act. I don't care. I've given you almost 24 hours to look at the offer, determine the price, determine the bottom line, and then let me go if it's not good enough by 6 o'clock on Saturday. The reason being is because I've been in this world too of escalating clauses. And then I had this one client, we wrote 7 offers. The eighth one is when I implemented this sort of strategy. He said, well, the deadline is really Monday. I said, I appreciate that. I said, they've lost 7 offers waiting till Monday. That was the dialogue I used. They've lost 7 offers waiting till Monday. And so they're not escalating. They're just telling you, this is what I got. And so what they also don't want to have happen is to be the stepping stone to the other offer. So you've got 525 and the agent, we got it, but we were less than what the maximum would be. But they felt like, but you're telling me you're going to leave Saturday night. I said, we are. Not Saturday night. It was Saturday morning, I think, noon or so. I said, because if this isn't going to win today, we got to go shopping. This is our 8th offer. And that was the piece that actually made the seller go, I got 525 in hand right now. And they're waiving a home inspection. And so none of the stuff in my house is going to be called on the carpet except for the HOA stuff. And so that's what won it, because they knew I got a 525, or I can wait around and see if I get one for higher and use this as a stepping stone to get it higher, or I can just take the 525.
Was the house new to the market, and were they holding open houses that weekend? Because that's usually the response.
Not, yeah.
You have an open house.
Yeah, they weren't holding it that weekend, but there were already multiple offers. I said, great, you're at 500, here's 525, no home inspection, and you got till tomorrow. She goes, but everyone else is, I don't care what everyone else is. This is my buyer. So I think what I'm really doing with the add the deadline, this is deadline, ahead of the deadline. What you're doing is as a writing agent, as a selling agent, a buyer agent, we have fallen into letting the listing agent tell me how to write my offer. Now, we teach that too. What do I need to do to win this offer? And if the piece of it is we're going to wait, I'm not going to do that anymore, especially if I've lost 2 or 3 offers and and the challenge my buyers were getting frustrated. I'm always number 2. And that told me they're using us as a stepping stone. So one is add a deadline ahead of the deadline. This is the best I can do, but it also means your buyer really needs to get their head in the game. This is the absolute best I can do. So add a deadline ahead of the deadline. The other one is, on page 1, I believe, the contract, when you are not having a home inspection for negotiation or for void, but you're truly having a home inspection for information purposes only, there's a blank there. There's 2 blanks. I have this amount of time to this amount of time to do my information only home inspection. That's fine. That's better than a void. But to even tighten it up more, if this property is in a homeowner association, it's to say, I'll do my home inspection for information purposes only after the HOA documents have been reviewed. And the documents must be delivered by this date. If not, then I get to do it. So you're negotiating that I'm doing it information purposes only. I'm going to do it after I've had the HOA review, but the HOA review must be done in a week or 2 weeks, whatever. So you're putting the seller on the notice, get your HOA documents to me so I can get this done. But what you've done is you've given the seller a little more clarity on the fact that I'm not going to have an home inspection for information purposes only and then get out on the HOA documents. See what I'm saying? Remember, the HOA documents must be delivered. That's law. They have to be delivered. You could put 0 on that home delivery and say, I'm going to waive any problems that I might find. But this, I think, is more powerful because now I've got my home inspection. Because usually we do a home inspection, within 5 or 6 days. And then we say, well, let's just wait till we get the HOA docs. We'll get out on that. So I'm taking that out of the buyer side and I'm giving it to the seller. I'm still going to do a home inspection, but we won't do it till after we've done the HOA review. And the HOA review must be done in 2 weeks. If not, then I do it in the 2-week moment.
You're suggesting it's only if you're just doing the inspection for information. Otherwise,
yes,
do the inspection.
Right. I had a listing agent toss this to me. He says, yeah, you can do information only, but I want you to do it after the HOA deadline. Because he didn't want me using the HOA to get out because of what I found during the home inspection, which we did. It was a little condo in Burke. It was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. But I thought that was a good strategy. So I haven't used that one yet, except as the buyer. But he put that on me, and I thought that's actually that's a pretty good, pretty good way of doing that. Any comments on that? Okay. I do want to touch on, I had something come to me to this morning actually on HOA. It was very interesting. The I got to think about this one for a second, but the HOA report came back and it had two sections. One was called Inspector's Observations and Comments. And then the other was Covenant Violations Noted. So the observations were really kind of home inspection items. Clean front and rear siding, removing all mold and mildew. Clean front stairs, removing all mold and mildew. Clean rear patio, removing all mold and mildew. It's not like the inspector thinks they got a mold. And this is the HOA inspector. This is not a home inspection. Trim surrounding entry door, window and shutters has faded. Can be updated to an approved heritage property. When replacing the roof, removal of satellite dishes. So that's their observations and comments, but they're not putting them into the next section, which here's the covenant violations. So the question was, well, are the comments part of the HOA violations? Or are you just telling me this? Because the covenant violations were mow and trim front yard, remove all weeds from front and rear yard, replace all missing window screens or remove all. Rake board near to 6309 top has lifted and needs to be replaced and then painted. No approved arc application for the entry door. So I would submit we have to look at the violations separate from their comments. Because I've had my HOA say, you're not there yet, but you need to address your bushes. So is it a violation? No, but I'm letting you know. And I think that's what's going on here. The other thing here that I'm going to bring about is when people say, I see you have mold in the house. There's mold on the front door. What do we know about mold? How do we know it's mold?
Usually don't.
We don't. You can't just look at this. In fact, in a home inspection, they'll say microbial substance needs to be checked by a mold expert. That's when you know you have mold. So I'm always suspect when someone walks in, sees black fuzzy stuff and says it's mold. It could not be mold. So that's that's a freebie today that y'all get.
Every house.
Oh gosh, yeah, every house does have. I think what they're really concerned about is black mold and is it inside. So that's really what they're looking at. One other point that came up yesterday about mold, and this was in a rental. Mold in a house for sale is treated differently than mold in a house for rent. Okay. You could negotiate not doing anything with mold in a house that you're selling. You say, look, it's as is. Yep, got mold. You got an inspection. It's $1,500 to fix it. Go fix it. Rental, the landlord can't do that. In the rights and responsibilities addendum that's signed by both the tenant and the landlord, it says if there's mold, the landlord will take care of it, or the tenant will take care of it and bill the landlord. So state law in Virginia says, nah, you don't get a free pass on this just because they're okay with it. You got to clean it up. So there you go on the mold. All right. Yeah, this is kind of in conjunction with the deadline. Just put your best and highest. If you keep failing because of escalation, then just walk in with the top dog number. I'm at, let's take our $750,000 house. Used to be single family. Now it's more like townhouse. And you know there's multiple offers. Well, I'll do 750 and then I'll escalate $5,000 a pop and I'll go all the way up to 799. Just do 799. You instantly wipe out anyone that can't do 799 and you show them that that's my price. And so you're just doing the best and highest instead of escalating. And that's just another strategy to show I'm serious about this. I'm not eking up to it. I've got the money to get through the appraisal. So has anyone done this piece here? Just go to the high. I did the one like I was describing you, for 525, and this was back in 18. So the house is probably now worth $800,000, but we just went straight in and said 525. We're not going to do any more escalating. And then it gave me the power to say, I'm giving you the best they got. And if best doesn't work, then we got to walk in 24 hours. We need a response.
It can be hard trying to convince your buyer of that because it's their money you're spending.
Yeah, it is. And by offer number 7, they were primed. They were like, because we were losing at $25,000. They would go like 500, and I'll go up 3,000 at a time, and I'll go to 525, and they'd lose at 526. So they just started saying, we're not going to escalate. We're just going to give you our highest and best. Okay. Anybody else?
Do you think this is true in general or just in a seller's market?
Oh, yeah, a seller's market. If you know there's multiples, just go ahead. And there again, you said a really good point. Well, you're spending their money, and I probably would not tell them this right up front because I've won many where we didn't go to the top. I've won some where I had an escalation and it didn't escalate. We were escalating $25,000, and I said, so it's 540? He goes, yeah. No escalations? No, there were no other offers. So like, oh, okay. Now I had another one where we had escalation. This was a townhouse in Vienna. And we were going to escalate, and the agent called me and said, hey, look, we're not going to escalate. We're just countering you to your highest price. Let's just get done with the escalation. So there's a couple of things there that's going on. The seller may think, hey, if you'll go to $799, we're going to counter to $799. Nothing wrong with that. Also, they don't have to show you what the other offer is, because maybe you offered them $775 or $750, escalating to $799, and the other offer was $710, escalating to $810 or whatever. Or no, they were offering $710 and your escalation's at $3, then the most you were going to get to, and this is in the old days, was $713. So, but $763. They're like, you know what? Forget that. We want $799. Now let's negotiate. So you could end up paying more than you could have with an escalation. But if you're competing with multiple offers and you keep losing with that strategy, where I am is like, stop being the stepping stone to the higher offer. Just say, this is as high as I can go. It's good for 24 hours. See you later. That's kind of what I look at. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. Now this is more of a, I'm going to come in and I'm going to offer you it's $750 house, but I'm going to give you $740 instead of asking you for $750 and $10,000 back. Or this usually comes when we're in a home inspection situation. And sometimes buyer will say, well, I want to drop the price. My advice to buyers is, and get your notepads out to walk this with me, okay? Dropping the price is not as much money for you as a buyer as it is if you just get money back at the table. Okay? Let's take my $750. I want to drop the price $10,000. The air conditioner needs attention. Okay, you dropped your price at $10,000. Did the buyer save out of pocket $10,000? No. If it's a 20% down payment, they only save $2,000. The seller drop the price or give you money is still the same amount of money. I drop it to $740, I've lost $10,000. I keep it at $750 and I give you $10,000 back, I've still lost $10,000. So let them lose money by giving your client money rather than losing money by dropping their price. That's my philosophy on this one here. You have a curious look on your face.
It's confusing when you say drop the price. You're talking about the buyer. Buyer doesn't drop the price. Buyer makes a lower offer.
Yes.
That's just.
Well, if we're negotiating in a home inspection situation, I've had buyers say, well, it's got so many problems, I just want to drop the price. And the buyers many times.
The buyer doesn't drop the price. The seller drops the price. Buyer
Right.
makes makes a lower
Well,
offer.
then right, but they'll make a lower, sometimes buyer will say, well, maybe, well, what I'm saying is in the negotiation, they may say, hey, I'm fine with the property's condition, but I want to bring the price down $10,000. And that's their negotiation. And I've had some buyers think that if I drop the price, I'm saving money. The reality is, unless it's cash, the buyer's only saving the down payment money. If they're putting down 20% on 10,000, they're saving $2,000. The seller is literally dropping their bottom line by $10,000, but the buyer's only saving 2,000. Does everyone understand that? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I kind of do. I probably gonna understand it more if I see it on a piece of paper, basically the net, like what's happening. But I kind of get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a good point.
Price drop, the seller loses money. Price drop, the buyer only saves the money they're putting down. Versus, I'm fine with 750, but we want 10,000 back. I get 10,000 at the table. Now my closing cost has dropped. That's literally $10,000 that I am not drawing out of my bank account for closing. That's why it's more powerful for the buyer. Plus, if you then have an appraisal issue, seller's still on the dime for the $10,000 credit. So let's say you're at 750, I'm getting 10,000 back, appraisal comes in at 747, and they're okay with that new price, the seller's still giving me $10,000 on a 747. I just operate under the assumption it's more powerful to get money back at the table than it is to drop the price. In a negotiation of home inspection and contract, obviously in a buyer's market, yeah, probably better to come down the price 3%. That's going to save you some money, save you down payment money, and get you in with a lower mortgage over time. Andy is my conscience over here in the classroom.
Be different. It's your points about you get the money back to cover your closing costs versus a tiny reduction in mortgage payment would still apply, wouldn't it? Regardless of whether it's
If you
buyers or
drop the
sellers.
price, it is. But if it's like, let's say the 750 and it's a buyer's market, which honestly was last August. Okay. So last August, you could come in and you could get some percentage off the price. So let's say I could get $25,000 off the price. It is the same. But if it's been lingering there and it's important to the buyer and they got plenty of cash, I'd rather just lower my payment forever. So let me take 25 grand off the price. So then you look at what are you really saving on $25,000? If it's 20%, you're saving 5 grand down payment. You're saving 5 grand on the down payment. And then your monthly payment is, I'm just going to toss this out there, $100 a month. So now in 10 years, I've saved another $12,000. So that's kind of how that works. Another one on seller subsidy is talk with the lender about, look, I got these closing costs over here, and my buyer's okay paying his closing costs. Can I add on a point or two and let that 10,000 go to that? So I'm not saving any money I'd already planned to spend as a buyer, but I add on a couple of points on my mortgage to lower my payment. I call that the seller subsidy that keeps on giving. Because now the seller has paid for that point or two. Let's say I got my 750 house and I'm putting down 20%. That's 150 grand. I'm getting a mortgage for 600,000. I want them to pay 2 points. That's $12,000. That's an expense to the seller, which unless taxes have changed is deductible for them. And weird thing, it's also deductible for the buyer because it's their mortgage. And now my rates come down. I think with 2 points, I think it comes down about a 0.5%. I think it's only a 1/4 point per 10,000. I could be wrong on that. But
You're
you've
right.
brought that interest rate down, and now their payments down, and they're moving forward, saving money month to month, using the seller's money to get those points instead of them paying the points.
You need to specify in the contract that you're gonna use the seller credit to pay points, and that's up to the buyer.
You
what to with
do,
the
yeah,
credit.
you don't have to. I remember when rates were really high, like 10, 11%, we would stipulate, I want 2 points from the seller to go to my points. So you stipulate it.
That was just to make it more appealing, I think.
It was to make it more appealing, but also the sellers, I think, were more ready to, because they understood, yeah, you're looking at 12%, you're looking at 10%. I'll give you a couple of points to help you buy my house. And we were joining together to get that done. So points, I think sellers are more like, okay, that's points that enables you to buy my house rather than me just giving you cash to go on vacation or just because you want to. Points was an important piece for them. All right. Now you got a free post-settlement occupancy. Interestingly, if you look at the escalation clause, okay, and I'm going to pull that up real quick so we all can look at that. If it'll let me pull it up. Here we go. In the escalation clause, it pinpoints what the charges are that are used to calculate the net. See who I got online here. Yeah, I got some newer agents. Let me explain this real quick. Online, do y'all see my DocuSign window?
Nope.
Yes, no?
Yes, we do.
Okay, got it. All right. Okay. So in the escalation, right here in this, the first part of the paragraph, net to seller is what we're escalating. Used to be we were escalating the price. Now we're escalating the net. And the net that they're using is net is defined as sales price less all seller concessions and or payment towards buyer brokerage compensation. Now, the problem with that one line there is it does not let me include the savings I'm giving to the seller with a free post-settlement occupancy or a free rent back. However, in reality, it is saving the seller some money and increasing what their expenses are. It's not increasing their net, but it's increasing what their expenses are. So while you can't really use the rent back as a means of determining an escalation, it is definitely a discussion you want to have with the listing agent. Say, are they giving you a free rent back? No, no one else is giving them a free rent back. I'm giving you a free rent back. Now, it's not part of the net, but please look at that. If they were to go rent something for 2 weeks at a hotel with all their family and pets and the storage, that's probably $300 a night. And they want 10 nights. I just got you $3,000 more than the competing offer. But according to the addendum, that's not included. Now, could the agent put that in there? So yeah, you are getting a net increase of $3,000 from this buyer and put it on their spreadsheet because it's real money. It's just not, it's not in the contract. So I'm pointing that out on giving them a free post-settlement occupancy. It provides them a higher net. Probably the better way to say it is provides the seller lower expenses which could make your offer more appealing.
It's just harder to quantify.
That's the word. It's harder to quantify, said my fellow mathematician attorney here. Yeah. And I don't know that I think some listing agents and some buyer agents, if it was included in the net sheet, they may argue because it's not in the addendum. But it's your seller making the decision, and the seller, I would point it out to them. Now with this offer A, they're also letting you stay here 10 days free. So 10 days of hotel, storage, moving early on, that's 10 days of expenses you don't have. So in reality, even though you're netting $2,000 less with this offer, they're giving you $3,000 less expenses. So you're kind of netting $5,000 more. So that would be the discussion you need to have with the listing agent to point that out. Maybe even do a little calculation in the email or put a calculation. I am starting to put that net sheet from NVAR. I'm putting my information in there and sending it over to them. So they see, okay, this is where you are. And if you escalate, this is where you are. Oh, and I'm getting a free post-settlement occupancy. Find a hotel and a storage unit that's going to be less than $300 a night. I don't think you're going to find it.
This is even harder to quantify, but it's not just what it would cost them to pay for the hotel or something, but the trauma, the psychological trauma of moving twice.
Yeah.
That's worth a lot.
And that is true.
Especially if somebody has kids and pets.
Yeah. So maybe we put a therapist line, a therapist line of, and going to your therapist to overcome all this enclosed. Yeah, that's a good one. But it's true. The emotional trauma of having to, okay, now we got to move again. The others aren't offering that. This one's offering that. It is a term. What I'm trying to get us to do is it is a term. It's a term of the offer, not a financial piece of the offer, but it does have a real financial benefit to the seller. And I would point that out.
If you can somehow settle beforehand on what that value is.
Yeah.
What the place is worth per night.
That's actually pretty simple. I just call our moving company and say, if someone were to have you store their stuff for 10 days in a truck, what would that cost them per night? And then I got a number. I'm going to do that. And I'll amend this video. Amend the video. There we go. Thanks, man. Yeah. Andy and I are brothers of a different mother, I think is what. Repair versus seller concession. I'll tell you what David Robertson says of Universal Title. Get a seller concession. Because he sits there at the table of the closing. David Robertson is our attorney with Universal Title, Falls Church. And he does a class here on different time. One of the ones he says, guys, just go with a seller concession. Here's why. Let's say you're repairing, let's say the one that I pulled up about all this stuff, the mold, the paint, the trim, and then the seller does it, and the buyer comes in who's paying $750,000 for this house, and the seller, because honestly, to clean up and to paint does not require a licensed contractor. Those are not licensed activities. So the seller could get out there with his own power washer and get his paintbrush out and paint, and make some dribblings on the siding. And he's like, I did what this said. And the buyer comes in and is like, you didn't do it well. And we just had this past week where a buyer did not want to go to closing because the seller got things done supposedly, but didn't get a clearance letter from the association. Now, honestly, I've seen that happen. The seller's done, the application's into the HOA, and the HOA is dragging their feet. They're not in the market to sell a house. They're just, that meeting's not till 3 days after your closing, But the fact is that even though HOA violations that are not repaired are not voidable events, they really cause a lot of consternation between buyers and sellers when the buyer thinks this is not done to my standard. And so sometimes it's better to say, look, just give me $3,000. I'll take care of it. And for many sellers, they're happy to do that. Say, look, I'll even do that with the violations. Because the violations are they don't have to be done. Okay, they just stay with the property now. And so that's where it's better to probably get a seller concession rather than getting a seller repair. Hold on, I got to plug my computer in. All right. We're charging, we're charging. There we go. Now, the other is if the seller is going to take care of business and get it done right, repair is probably cheaper than a concession. Because sometimes buyers say, well, I need $5,000. And the seller's like, I got my handyman that'll do it for 2,000. And I'll supervise that and make sure it gets done. I had a seller where there were these items that came up in the inspection and people loved the basement and he had completely redone it himself. And I said, did you see the basement? And they said, yeah. I said, do you like the basement? We love the basement. I said, the seller did all that himself. So except for electrical, would you be okay with him doing all these other items? They were like, go for it. Because they had evidence that this seller really knew what he was doing and they were okay with that. So items that are not required to have a license, which would be roofing, got to have a license. Anything plumbing, so water heater, leaks, anything electrical, those have to have a license. Okay. A Class A license can come in and do it because they're going to, even though they're not an electrician, but a Class A license can do it. Class B and C, they really can't do it because they're not an electrician or a plumber for these licensed sections. But if there's question, if the place has got a lot of, lot of issues, and you just see that this seller has not really been taking care of it, as a buyer, I would say, you know what? I want to get my people out there. I can see he really doesn't take care of things. And this is where the hot market attitude that some sellers get, it's such a hot market. I got a door on the front, I'll sell it, and they're just opening themselves up and they want to ride the wings of the market to get the high price instead of actually doing um, the work and getting it done. So any thoughts on that? Mine is if I see there's problems with the property, I'm going to get a seller concession. If I see they have taken care of it and we found a few things, I'm gonna let them take care of it. I had a deck issue on the bottom pylon. It was rotting and looked like it had termite, but everything else was fabulous. The lady had workmen coming and going all the time. You could just tell. And so we left it up to her to replace that pylon. And for her, it was like $1,400. So do I want the $1,400 or do I want the pylon fixed? I'm gonna let her fix it because that's the other thing. Let them repair it and find what?
The other problem.
Other problems. Right. That'll give me $3,000, $5,000, and then we start working on it, and now it doubles because there's things behind it. I'd rather they find that out instead of my buyer. So there's pluses and minuses on both repair or replace. Okay. Anything else? This is another strategy. Waive the HOA violation requirements. We now have this in the contract. It used to be that when you have the HOA documents that the buyer, they could have, but then it was not in the contract. You had to write an addendum. Now it's in there. I want to waive the HOA violations. I'll take them on myself. And so it relieves the seller of having to fix it. Again, this is probably in the realm of the house has deferred maintenance. Sometimes not. Sometimes someone takes care of their house and then suddenly, Mr. or Ms. HOA inspector comes along and finds a whole bunch of stuff. And it could be like maybe they laid down pavers in the back out of the patio and they didn't get a permit for it. And not only did they not have not a permit, but they didn't get
I don't think you need a permit for that.
not a permit, but what I meant was you didn't get an art committee approval. And so now you as the new homeowner say, hey, look, you know what? I'm not worried about it. I'll do that. And actually the one I was telling you about earlier where the violation was not taken, here's where the buyer was. It's a violation. And I need to see that they've cleared it. The violation was they had no paperwork. They weren't catching them on the fact that they had a fence that they had put up. They were catching them on that we don't have documentation about this fence. They didn't say the fence was bad. So the seller was losing all this sleep and all getting all wrapped around the axle because the paperwork wasn't in. So I think we as professionals have to say, look, I get it. You're afraid you're getting a fence that's not approved, but that's not what they said in the violation. The violation was you didn't have an application. I bought a house with a couple out in Gainesville, and HOA was fine. And then a few years later, we're selling it and buying another one. And the HOA inspection they got said, we don't have an application for this big old patio, concrete patio. I'm like, what? So thankfully I kept the file. I went back to their HOA inspection and it wasn't there 4 years earlier. So once it's, even though it's clean HOA report in 2018, it doesn't mean it's going to be clean in 2026 for the same thing. So just be aware of that. It's a fluid situation. Don't lose sleep over it. And just understand over time, you're going to run into that too. Okay.
You know, it occurs to me a lot of these things boil down to it depends.
Yeah.
On the particular situation and on the personalities and temperaments of the people on both sides.
Exactly.
You know, like some buyers want to fix the problems themselves. Some are petrified of that and really want the buyer to fix it.
Yeah, that's true. The ones that did that I was telling you about where they waived everything and they went in full guns a-blazing. I'll do 25 grand. This is 5% over. I mean, that's a lot. He went 5% over. He would look at me, he's like, Anthony, I'm an IT guy. I do not own it was coming out of an apartment. I do not own a toolbox. You got to understand, I've dedicated all my energies to technology, information, repair. I know. And you know, different generation. I mean, my dad, when he sold his house, he had tons of tools and everything. And my brother, my older brother, 1 year older, he says, all I want's the toolbox. And it was a Sears Craftsman toolbox. I said, you want the tools? He goes, well, if you got tools in it, fine. I just want the toolbox. That's all he wanted, you know? It's like, it's so funny. Of course, my brother, he's like, he built his own house and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I can paint the door. There you go, you know? So anyway, but waive all HOA violations, put it in writing. This is part of my offer. It is as is, but I'm going to waive the HOA violations as well. And on the HOA review, I'm going to put 0 days. I get them, they're done. And so it takes away the fear that the homeowner has that you might back out because of HOA violations, which to my newer agents, remember, if you're in a property management, not property management, but an HOA or a COA, it's by law, those documents have to be delivered. They cannot waive it. And you get to the day of settlement and you still don't have it, the buyer can walk. So that's how important the state looks at this as part of that transaction. Same thing with the D-POR disclosure form. If the seller doesn't have that in there, we get to the day of closing, still haven't received it, buyer can walk away. Now, once they've closed, they can't walk and say they can't go back and rescind the closing. But those are important documents, and that's why when I get one that's in an HOA, I say I bug them like crazy. We're listing. I need you to order it now. Go get it. I want it on my desktop, and I love it when it's like we're ratified. Hey, by the way, here's the HOA documents. You know. And they got the 3 days to negotiate. Okay. I think it's the same one. I think that's all I got. So, what do y'all have to add to this this discussion? What do y'all got? Let's go all the way back to the top. Anything y'all have done?
Well, I have for a question. I have buyers. I think I mentioned the other day. I have buyers who are interested in buying a very high price condo, $2 million condo in W Marriott restaurant.
Wow.
They want closing delayed by 8 to 10 months. seller to make that palatable, other than a higher price.
Wow.
And my buyers are paying cash, so there's no financing.
Right. So you can do that. Yeah. Just so you guys online know, you can delay settlement in a cash situation. Also, you can get a lot of money back in a cash situation for closing costs. But the thing is what do you need closing costs for? Because you don't have a loan or anything. And with cash, you can do as long a rent back as you want. It's when you have a mortgage that you're limited to 60 days, unless you're buying it as an investment property and you've got the proper down payment. So on that one, they're just trying to get access to their money? Is that what's going on? Or they got to sell something?
No, these people have lots and lots of money. But they want a lot of time to, they're not in a hurry to move into the place. They want to delay closing it's a little fuzzy to me. I don't know, move some money around or something. And then they want to rent it out for a while before they move in. They may not move in for another year or two.
Yeah. Oh, substantial.
Yeah.
Maybe if you have it in the contract, I know they want to settle later, but if you can get across that line, say, how about we settle now, but we have it in the contract that they have a lease. See, so there's no mortgage, so you can have a lease of the current owners. In other words, it's not a rent back. It's an actual lease that, boom, they go for 6 months.
When you say a lease, current owners.
With the current owners, you have a lease with them that they have to stay in it for 6 months.
Oh, no. The sellers are the condo developers, brand new buildings.
Oh, I see.
So there's nobody living in it.
Yeah. Okay. To think that one through a little bit. What would entice a new build to delay closing? Is it the model?
No.
Make your offer on the model. Because then they don't care.
They don't
The model,
really have a model. I mean, we looked at half a dozen units, including one that was stored.
yeah, okay. That's another thing. If you have people that are looking to buy and get rent immediately, and they're doing new build, offer to buy the model. It's going to be a lot more because it's got all the bells and whistles. But the builder's like, well, we're here for another 8 months, and now you have a tenant in there. And then just say, I'm buying the model. You can rent it back for 8 months, but then I want the garage, it's an office, turned back into a garage. So that's another strategy if your people aren't. But then you buy it, get paid, and then the builder's renting it back from your buyer. Yeah, I've seen that happen before. And builders like it because like, hey, we've already sold our last unit. This is a market strategy I'm about to give you. If your people are buying new build, purchase the last week at the end of the quarter because they're clearing out their books at the end of each quarter. Another one is buy new home the last week of the year. They're closing out their year. Nail it down because they want to move it, and buy when they're closing out a new development. Because they want to close that development out before they start on another one. So new homes, they have timelines they got to go with, and just corporately and profit and financing. Well, when you get that done, the bank says, we'll open up your financing on your next one, or you get it down to a certain level. And I remember I had a buyer, we were looking at it, and I got this straight from we didn't buy it, but I went back to the sales rep. I said, why are these deals so big? This is a great deal. It's like, well, at the end of the quarter, and especially the last week of the quarter, we got to move this stuff because plus we're closing this development down. We're done. We've sold them all. And we got to move our whole team over to it. And so I learned that the builders got these deadlines in place that you may not know about or the buyer may not know about because of the status of where they are in finishing out the development. Yeah.
Counting on my fingers, how many months till the end of the year? That'd be 8 months.
Yeah. So, because that instead of going up, because they will, and that was, I remember during COVID, they wouldn't let us buy too far in advance because of supply chain issues. I was buying a property with a senior living community, and they said, yeah, we're about to go up on prices. And once you've been in it a while in the business, you realize when they're telling you they're about to go up on prices, they're about to go up on prices. They're just letting you know, you want these prices and you buy it now, because their costs keep going up as a builder. And when they say we're going to build for the next 6 months, now they have to go up on the prices to cover the cost of materials. Well, back then, they were telling them, quit selling so far out. We don't know if we can get the product. Like my guy, he got this little bitty refrigerator because they couldn't get it in from China. And then when they finally got it in, he says, what do I do with this old refrigerator? I said, well, if you want it, you can have it and put it in your garage. So he got a new refrigerator, a secondary one that just went into the garage after they closed. So anything else? No? Okay. Well, there you go. Thanks for coming out this morning. I know it's only an hour. So in 30 minutes, I'll have broker time, and we'll talk about those issues. And forget what exactly it was we were talking about, but we're gonna do that.
Promise something.
I did promise
I forgot
something.
what it was.
All right.